This is Red, White, and Bluegrass.
A growing trend has been seen across the country on both sides of the presidential primary, and Kentucky was no outlier on Tuesday. On the Democrat side of things, while President Biden won Kentucky's primary handily, the share of Democrat primary voters that voted uncommitted was extremely notable at 18%. Uncommitted won out in 6 counties. On the Republican side, while it is all but a guarantee that former President Trump will carry Kentucky in November, the percentage of GOP voters voting for candidates other than Trump made it into the double digits. The share of primary voters uncommitted or voting for candidates other than the presumptive nominees has been extremely notable in other states, especially in states where the margin of victory in November could be less than that of the uncommitted voters in either side's primary contest. It could be a worrying sign for both nominees and also a signal from voters of their lack of enthusiasm for either candidate on the November ballot. The uncommitted votes will garner 5 delegates from Kentucky, and there's a total of 28 uncommitted delegates to Biden's 3,750. Representative Burke, I'll let you start this conversation. Is that significant?
Well, I do think it's very interesting. I don't know how significant it is, though. Looking back at President Obama's reelection in Kentucky, we actually had a greater number of uncommitted voters at that time. So this is something that's been going on in Kentucky for at least a little while. I think part of the explanation has to do with the shift from Democratic voters to the Republican Party. We still have people on the voter rolls who are registered Democrats who really want to vote for Republicans. So you could have put any Democrat as the presidential nominee and they would have been uncommitted because that's not their guy. So we have that at play. I also thought it was really interesting that there's a big difference in where those uncommitted voters were coming from. So for the Democratic primary, it was Eastern and Western Kentucky that was voting the highest rates of uncommitted voters. So are they representative of the whole state? Or is there something unique about where they're from that's led them to make those votes?
Is there any issue in particular you think would not have them supporting the current President Biden?
Well, I think that perhaps it is Eastern and Western Kentucky where the greatest number of people who have changed parties but not changed their registration live. And so they may really be Republican voters and choose President Trump in the upcoming elections. But I don't think that the sort of national trend is exactly what we're seeing here in Kentucky. So the campus protests and things like that, where people have talked about voting uncommitted to show support, I'm not thinking that that's really what happened in Kentucky's primary.
Senator Bledsoe, your thoughts on this?
I think that's a really good point. I think some of it is geographic, you know. It was never in question if Trump was going to win the Republican primary. But I think there were a number of people who wanted to vote for Nikki Haley as the first female Republican woman on the presidential ballot. That's pretty historic, and I think that showed up in some places. People voted for DeSantis and others because they had primary commitments or people they'd been following for a little while. And I think you're right. Sometimes they voted uncommitted, maybe because they haven't decided exactly where they want to be yet. And that's part of the primary degrees of difference that we're seeing.
With Nikki Haley saying this week that she will now go on to vote for Trump, do you think that affects Haley voters down the line and potentially, you know, going to the polls in November and saying, might as well?
Potentially, and I've talked to some Haley voters with that very vein, like, why do you vote for her, and does this change your mind now, you know, after the Tuesday primary? And maybe there's a long road between now and November, so I think there's going to be a lot of movement in both parties to kind of figure out exactly where we're going to be, but I wouldn't be too surprised if people unite around a party candidate by the time we get to November.
What about on the flip side of that, people that may be dissatisfied or tempted to stay home on Election Day?
I think that's true. Turnout at 10%, I mean, good night, that's really low. I mean, that means 90% of people said, I'm not going to take the opportunity to go vote. And when they don't vote and show up, we get more of the extremes of both sides, and that's apathetic. And that's not, I'm concerned about that, so I think we need to get a better ground game out, quite frankly.
I think it's very important that we work on voter turnout and just engagement. I think so many people feel like government is just so disconnected from their lives at this point, but by failing to participate, they're sort of creating the monster that they really don't like. Mm-hmm. And so we need to bring people back in and help them understand why it's so important so that it can be more representative.
Yeah, I'd like to have a bigger conversation on this, and I think we'll bring it up a little later in the show, but Secretary of State Adams, I think his predicted turnout of 15%, what we had, ended up being a little bit lower. Mm-hmm. We'll have to put a pin in the discussion there.